හරිම සුමුදුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Saturday the 11th of November 2023. Disappointed. Sports Minister calls the ICC ban on Sri Lanka illegal. Says steps will be taken to present an appeal to the ICC. Sri Lanka Cricket President meanwhile denies claims of corruption and theft. Budget 2024. Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry Sri Lanka calls on the government to address electricity tariffs via fiscal measures or otherwise.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසින් ලබාගත හැක.
This is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana First at 9. I'm AdaDerana Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story tonight, Minister of Sports Roshan Ranasinghe says he's disappointed by the decision of the ICC to ban Sri Lanka cricket and further called the sudden decision by the ICC illegal. He made these remarks at a press conference held today. As the national spotlight continues to shine on Sri Lanka cricket, here is a brief chronology of the dispute followed by the minister's remarks today. Since early this year, Sri Lanka cricket has been under the spotlight as the International Cricket Council levelled allegations of severe political interference in SLC's administration. In April this year, Chief Executive Officer of the International Cricket Council, Jeff Allardyce, urged the Minister of Sports to allow Sri Lanka cricket to operate independently without any intervention by the government. A month later, ICC Deputy Chairman Imran Khawaja arrived in Sri Lanka as a member of the three-member committee appointed by the International Cricket Council to look into political interference in Sri Lanka's cricket administration. During his visit, Imran Khawaja met with the Minister of Sports Roshan Ranasinghe and urged the Sports Minister to allow Sri Lanka cricket to act according to the rules of the International Cricket Council and to not interfere into cricket administration. Later in September, the ICC denied the request made by the Sports Minister to have discussions on developing independence and transparency of cricket in Sri Lanka. The minister proposed the discussions to be between the ICC and a three-member International Sports Coordination Committee appointed by the minister consisting of former cricket captain Sidath Vettamuni, former SLC President Upali Dharmadasa and Attorney-at-Law Rakita Rajapaksa. The ICC, however, strictly maintained that it will only engage in discussions with the SLC and not with any politically appointed committee. Subsequently, on the 5th of November, the minister appointed an interim committee to oversee the operations of Sri Lanka cricket while suspending its executive committee. The minister justified his decisions by alleging the Sri Lanka Cricket Board of corruption, theft, while also alleging that the board is directly responsible for the dismal performance of the national team at the World Cup. However, upon the consideration of a petition filed by the SLC President Shammi Silva against the Sports Minister the very next day, the Court of Appeals ordered the appointed interim committee to be suspended for 14 days. Against such a backdrop last night, the International Cricket Council's Executive Board suspended Sri Lanka cricket's membership of the ICC with immediate effect. In a statement, the ICC said their board met yesterday and determined that Sri Lanka cricket is in serious breach of its obligations as a member, in particular with regard to the requirement to manage its affairs autonomously and to ensure that there is no government interference in the governance, regulation and/or administration of cricket in Sri Lanka. The statement further noted that the ICC board is set to meet on the 21st of November, after which the future course of action is expected to be clearer. This development came at a time where Sri Lanka cricket is scheduled to host the Under-19 Men's World Cup from January to February next year. However, ESPN Cricinfo, a sports website solely dedicated for the game of cricket, reported that SLC requested the suspension themselves in order to illustrate to the Sri Lankan government that the ICC will not tolerate further government intervention. Addressing a media briefing this afternoon, the Minister of Sports Roshan Ranasinghe said Sri Lanka will make an appeal to the ICC to get the ban lifted.
What is your reaction on yesterday's ban?
Right. I'm very disappointed about this notice, which I got to know from the media. And since I heard that message, I called and met with some legal advisors. And to lift this international ban, we are working on several bases. But at the moment, we don't know what are the complaints to put this ban. Because generally, this is not the way when ICC or any other body apply the ban, they have long procedure, but this is so surprise and it's not ethical. ICC suspension of Sri Lanka is illegal. This is the way they can ban us. Number one, ICC can only suspend a member at the annual general meeting with the vote taken from all 108 ICC members. Number two, before suspending a member, ICC needs to give notice at the AGM requesting notice member to remedy shortcoming. Number three, suspension only happens 1 year later at the next AGM if the notice member has not remedied its shortcoming. ICC has not followed that course, and that's the main thing. They have proceeded. Few months ago, I can remember, based on the Sports Council chairman wants to stop some unnecessary people going abroad from cricket fund. He want to stop that. Then that time there was a conflict and they complained to ICC and they sent me a letter asking what kind of interference you have to look after this. And I said, you better come. We'll have a discussion. Then they came here. Mr. Kawaja, who is the deputy chairman of ICC, he came and met me and the others as well, other members. Then they sent me a letter. We can't see any interference and please work on harmony basis. That's the way, because this is sovereign country. It's Sri Lanka Cricket. How they can condemn our country like this? How many interim committee happened in this country before? Even still, Pakistan under interim committee. Afghanistan, according to the ICC law, there should be a ladies team. But according to Taliban law, they can't have a ladies team. That also then government interfering. Why they treated us this way? And Pakistan, even the normal, whatever the elected committee also, chairman will be appointed by Prime Minister. As a sovereign country, everybody have to regret about this decision.
Mr. Can you explain to us again what is the next step
First, we have to ask what are the complaints against us. And then we have to write based on that. We have to answer them. No. Once they answer, they can decide without going even to the dispute committee to resolve this matter. Otherwise, next step, we can appeal to the ICC dispute resolve committee. Then they have to take the decision. Otherwise, we have to go to the CAS, Court of Arbitration for Sports, which is located in Switzerland, Lausanne. That's the procedure. I think Sri Lankan Cricket Board chairman having the veto power. එනේ වෙන මට මොකද්ද කියන්න තියෙන වචනේ? දැන් ඔහුගේ කීම මතනේ තහනම් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔහු පිටිපස්සේ මහා බලයක් තියෙනවා. I can't raise my finger to anyone, but people can realize and people can understand someone behind there who is very powerful in the ICC.
Now, in keeping with Sri Lanka Cricket, President of Sri Lanka Cricket, Shammi Silva, says the continuation of the ban on Sri Lanka Cricket by the International Cricket Council will lead to a loss of $50 million to be incurred by Sri Lanka Cricket next year. Addressing a media briefing today, Shammi Silva says the decision to ban Sri Lanka Cricket was taken by the ICC due to political interference made by the Minister of Sports, Roshan Ranasinghe.
මට ඇත්තටම පාර්ලිමේන්තුව ගැන දුක හිතුණා ඊයේ පෙරේදා. මොකද ඒකවල එක්කෙනෙකුටවත් විගණාධිපති වාර්තාව කියව ගන්න බැරි වෙච්ච ගැරික ගැන. එක්කෙනෙක් කිව්වම අනිත් ඔක්කොම කියන්නේ හොරු කියලා. අපි වර්ල්ඩ් කප් ගියා ගිය සැරේ හැම එක්කනම එමෙතුතුමාගෙන් අවසර අරගෙන තමයි අපි ගියේ. ඒවා ඔක්කොම ලියුම් තියෙනවා. අපි ඒවා ඔක්කොම ඕන වෙලාවට අපි ඒක පෙන්නන්නම්. අපි වීසා ගන්න ලිස්ට් එකක්. මේකේ ඇමතිතුමාගේ දුවලා දෙන්නගේ නමත් මේකේ තියෙනවා. මේ ඔක්කොටම අපි මොකද ඇමතිතුමාට ඒවලේ ඔස්ට්‍රේලියන් ගවර්න්මන්ට් එකෙන් වීසා දෙන්නේ නැහැ. මේකේ කිසිම එකක් වැරද්දක් නැහැ. ඔක්කොම දීලා තියෙන නිර්දේශ දීලා තියෙන්නේ. මේක කියව ගන්න බෑ කියන්නේ ඕනම එක්කෙනෙකුට කියව ගන්න පුළුවන්. සත පහක්වත් අපි මෙතන වංචා කරලා නැහැ. මම මෙතනට එනකොට මේක බංකොලෝ සංගමයක්. මේ වගේ දේශපාලන බලපෑම් කිසිම බෝඩ් එකකට ආවේ නැහැ. ඒකින්ද තමයි ICC එක මේක නැවැත්තුවේ. දැන් අපිට තියෙන අනිත් ප්‍රශ්නේ ICC එකේ අපිට under 19 World Cup ගහන්න අපේ ටීම් එකට ගහන්න දෙයිද? අපේ national side එකට ගහන්න දෙයිද? මේවා ඔක්කොම අපි ගිහිලා කතා කරලා දැම්ම 21 වෙනිදා මාව මේවා කරලා තිනවා. අපි ගිහිලා මේක මේවා කරගන්න ඕන. නම් මෙයා අපෙන් මාස 5කට ඉස්සෙල්ලා හරි 6කට ඉස්සෙල්ලා හරි අපේ ආදායමෙන් 120ක් ඒ කියන්නේ බිලියන් 4.2ක් විතර වෙනවා 120 කියන්නේ. ඒක එයාගේ මිනිස්ට්‍රි එකට එවන්න කියලා අපිට ලියුමක් එවුවා. අපි කිව්වා මේක දෙන්න බෑ. මේක ICC එකෙන් එවන සල්ලි ICC එකෙන් අපිට මේවා කරන්න දෙන්නේ නැහැ. මෙන්න ලියුම. ඔයගලන්ට ඕන එක්කෙනෙකුට කියන්න මම ලියුම දෙන්නම්. මම ජනාධිපතිතුමාටත් මේක කතා කරන්න ඕන. නැත්තම් මේක හරියන්නේ නැහැ. දෙකෙන් එකක් අපිට වෙන්න ඕන. මොකද නැත්තම් අපිට ICC බෑන් එක අපිට යනවා දිගටම. අපි නිකන් හරි ICC එක අපේ බෑන් එක අරන් දැම්මේ නැත්තම් එන අවුරුද්දට විතර ඩොලර් මිලියන් 50ක් අපිට අලාභයක් වෙනවා. ඒක මෙයා තනිකර සිලෙක්ෂන් වලට මේ සැරේ ඉන්වෝල්ව් වුණා. අපි දුෂ්මන්ත චමිරවයි වනිදු හසරංගවයි 15 දාලා තමයි අපි යවන්න හැදුවේ. අපි මේක යවුවට පස්සේ මෙයා ඒවල ෆිට්නස් ටෙස්ට් ඉල්ලලා ලැබුවා. අපේ අයිඩියා එක තිබ්බේ දුෂ්මන්ත චමිර එක මැච් එකක් නොගා හිඳි. එතන ඉඳලා අපිට යාව ගහන්න පුළුවන්. වනිදු හසරංගවත් ඔපරේෂන් එක නොකර හරි මැච් දෙකක් තුනක් ගියාට පස්සේ හරි අපි මේව කරනකම් ගහන්න පුළුවන්. මෙයා කෙලින්ම ඒ නම් දෙක කපලා එවන්න කිව්වා අපිට. මේක තමයි political interference.
Now, meanwhile, Sri Lanka, after being suspended by the ICC, now suffers another blow as the national team failed to qualify for the ICC Champions Trophy 2025. Sri Lanka were forced out of the race after Bangladesh scored 305 runs for the loss of 8 wickets in the 50 overs in their most recent ICC World Cup match against Australia and are ahead of Sri Lanka in the rankings based on the net run rate. Top 7 ranked teams of the ICC World Cup 2023 and hosts Pakistan were set to qualify for the event, and Sri Lanka, due to some big losses in the Cricket World Cup 2023, lingered at the bottom of the points table at the end of their campaign. Sri Lanka finished their ICC Cricket World Cup 2023 campaign with only 2 wins out of 9 games played, pushing them officially out of the qualification race for the Champions Trophy 2025. Now, a special meeting was held this afternoon between President and the Government's Medical Officers Association regarding the existing issues of the country's health sector. Addressing the media following the meeting, the Secretary of the Government Medical Officers Association, Dr. Haritha Aludge, commented on the current status of the country's health sector, insisting that this is the final opportunity to retain medical officers within the country, and added that the GMO will not take the responsibility of the harm caused to the country's health sector if the government fails to take the necessary measures and to address the issues prevalent in the health sector.
A meeting was held between President Ranil Wickremesinghe and the Government Medical Officers Association at the Presidential Secretariat this afternoon. The meeting was held to discuss issues pertaining to taxation and healthcare.
විශේෂයෙන්ම වෛද්‍යවරු රට හැරදා යාම හරහා රෝහල් බිඳ වැටමින් තියෙනවා. මේ වෙනකොට රෝහල් 20ක් වහන්න වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව තවත් රෝහල් 44ක ලියාපදිංචි වෛද්‍යවරයෙක්ගෙන් සේවය පවත්වාගෙන යන්න වෙන්නේ. ඊට අමතරව තවත් ඒකක සහ රෝහල් 400කට අධික ප්‍රමාණයක් ඉදිරි මාසයේ දෙක වගේ කාලය ඇතුළත බිඳ වැටීමේ තර්ජනයට මුහුණ දෙනවායි කියන කාරණේ මේ සියල්ල හරහා අපි විශේෂයෙන් රජයේ වෛද්‍යාරික සංඝ විදිහට ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කළ තියෙන විදිහට මේ ලැබිච්ච අවසන් අවස්ථාව කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා 5000ක් වෛද්‍යවරු රට තුල රඳව ගන්න. ඒ අවස්ථාවිනුත් රජයේ පැත්තෙන් හරි ප්‍රයෝජන ගැනීමේ නැත්තම් විශේෂයෙන්ම පද්ධතියට වෙන හානිය සම්බන්ධයෙන් අපිට ලොකු වගකීමක් ගන්න බැහැයි කියන කාරණේ නැවත මතක් කරන්න ඕනේ.
Now, a group of representatives of the International Atomic Energy Agency are expected to arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow to provide advice and hold discussions on the establishment of a nuclear energy law. The group of representatives are expected to support Sri Lanka in drafting the new legislation on nuclear energy.
On 16th of July, Sri Lanka agreed with Russian nuclear giant Rosatom to build a nuclear power plant that may run 2 reactors and generate 300 megawatts of energy. Addressing the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, the Director General of Rosatom, Alexei Likhachev, highlighted that forming legally binding agreements with several nations, including Sri Lanka, is pivotal to build nuclear power plants.
Through the ability to develop the energy capacity of the countries, Rosatom has the opportunity to maintain leadership in the energy sector and increase the number of international projects. Accordingly, Myanmar, Kyrgyzstan and Sri Lanka should enter into legal agreements with Rosatom regarding nuclear power in 2023.
Meanwhile, given Sri Lanka's energy woes, the need to build nuclear power plants were widely highlighted. Accordingly, 5 representatives, including the head of Nuclear and Treaty Law Section at the International Atomic Energy Agency, Anthony Weatherall, is expected to arrive at Sri Lanka tomorrow to hold discussions on the preparation of the required legislation to govern the use of nuclear energy. The representatives are expected to hold talks with the Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board and the Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Regulatory Council. Meanwhile, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board, Professor S.R.D. Rosa, says the IAEA will provide required support in drafting the new law. In the meantime, during the debate on the report of the IAEA in New York, Permanent Representative of Sri Lanka Mohan Piris said technical cooperation for nuclear energy for proceedings which promotes peace is particularly important for developing countries including Sri Lanka.
IAEA is a formidable institution that deals with issues of war and peace, of human health, of energy, food, and water. We also note that through its technical cooperation programs, the agency has assisted developing countries in harnessing nuclear technology. It is noteworthy that the IAEA has played a critical role in fortifying the emergency preparedness and response capabilities of member states. In doing so, the IAEA has provided training, guidance, and support during nuclear emergencies, and the agency has also helped facilitate effective and coordinated international responses. Sri Lanka acknowledges the agency's dedication, expertise, and commitment to fulfilling its mandate. The technical cooperation activities of the agency are more than ever vital, we say, for a developing country such as Sri Lanka. We believe that to minimize the risk of proliferation requires more rigorous inspection, improved technology, and increased transparency. Secondly, we do feel that we can improve in the provision of better coordination with member states, providing timely and accurate information and facilitating international cooperation in the case of accidents or incidents. Thirdly, we ask that there be a wider scope in its technical cooperation programs to assist member states, particularly developing countries, in building their nuclear infrastructure and capabilities by providing more opportunities for training and expertise and the resources to enhance safety, security, and peaceful applications of nuclear technology.
Sri Lankan school closures during the pandemic was one of the longest in the world. Public policy analyst and president of the Institute of 21st Century Questions, Dr. Erwin Studin, says Sri Lanka should not keep its schools closed for a long period of time again, and added that they have to be reopened with high energy. Speaking to Indivari Amuwatha during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, Dr. Studin is of the view that the government has to take necessary measures to rectify the education loss due to the pandemic, considering the education of children as a national mission.
Post-pandemic students' education was affected. What's the impact here?
That as soon as the schools close, we have catastrophe. That is, you have a large proportion of students, larger in South Asia than other regions, that have no access to internet as soon as you go online. If they have no access for 21 months, they leave education permanently. That's at all ages, especially young girls. They might go off to the labor force, or they might go and get married. Young boys go into antisocial behavior. They go into labor force, again, in grade 3, grade 5, before A-levels. If they're locked in the home with a putative internet device or a phone, but they're in an abusive home, also they're out of education. Education may go on online for 2 years. The boy or girl is being abused physically, sexually, verbally. They go back to a school that is moved on. They've moved to it in a different direction socially. They're also out. Children with handicaps, children that don't master the language of instruction. In our case, it would be French or English. Here it would be Sinhala or Tamil. And teenagers for whom education loses all meaning when it goes online. Over time, they just click off the device, and the costs of exit from education are zero. So we have a huge contingent of kids in the world, unfortunately largest in South Asia, that we call third bucket kids. First bucket, physical school. Second bucket, online school. Third bucket, no school at all. No school. And Sri Lanka has a non-negligible number of kids who also receive no schooling at all, and tomorrow will become adults that will bleed into all systems of society. So the lesson for a country like Sri Lanka that has a rich education history and an interest in education, but that will have a very difficult future between India, China, and a rising Asia, is never to close the schools again, ever. Reopen them with high energy, because you have to catch up on the learning loss, and then make education the centerpiece of the future of the country.
How do we really rectify now those 2 to 3 years of loss of education to the future of our country?
We collapsed the state of the childhood. We lost time. The child is now 15 or 16, but with an inferior education. The only thing I can say to get us up is energy, energy, energy. Do not start the system as if it were 2019. You have to say it's a national mission to educate your children to the nines, because the world post-pandemic and post-economic crisis, post-Easter attacks, and in Asia that's very complicated, is much more difficult than it was in 2019. And you're either prepared or not prepared. So the reporting from our work on the Commission across over 60 countries is to do what Jamaica did. Jamaica added 2 years of schooling to make up for the gap. They need more incubation. If you don't have education, what kind of tomorrow would you like to have? You cannot talk about an economy, you can't talk about foreign policy, you can't talk about a social fabric if you have an uneducated or undereducated population. It's a simple fact of history.
How should we really bring our policy into this to ensure that these fundamentals are brought together to fast track and catch up what we've lost?
Region, the one thing you have going for you is You have a very talented, energetic population, very smart, with a distinguished history, and you are at the center of the world. Asia is the center. And it would be a tragedy if Sri Lanka's boat weren't lifted along with the rest of Asia. But I'm also sad to report that many countries did not close their schools for a prolonged period, and therefore they overeducated or prepared their children properly for tomorrow. So they will look at countries like mine, Canada, Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, the United States, Argentina, countries that undereducated or collapsed their education systems during the pandemic. They will look at us like we're Martian. You didn't educate, too bad, we're ready, and we will meet them in the theater of competition in life, and we will be underprepared. They will beat us. So Sri Lanka needs to overcompensate at the heart of the policy agenda across the country. I'm certainly not here to intervene in domestic affairs, but it seems uncontroversial that you can declare, be one of the first countries in the world, if not the first, to say Sri Lanka does not close its schools ever. I mean ever. That will send a thunderbolt through the political and policy class and through the society saying, you know what, education is central. We will not collapse our future. And thereafter, all of the parties, all of the policy thinkers, all the academics and media talk about education as the platform, the centerpiece of all public policy, the central system. From there you can talk about foreign policy, the military, you can talk about the economy, you can talk about the social fabric, healthcare, agriculture, all of these wonderful areas in Sri Lanka, but they are given arteries from an education system that bleeds hopefully positively into them.
We consulted more experts on what to expect from Budget 2024 to be tabled in Parliament on Monday. President of the Federation of Chambers of Commerce and Industry of Sri Lanka, Kirti Gunawardena, highlighted several major concerns overwhelming the Sri Lanka businesses in the current economic context. The president of the FCC ISL particularly emphasized on the impact caused by the recent continuous increase in electricity tariffs and also urged the government to conduct much-needed short, medium and long-term studies before committing the nation to free trade agreements.
So in a situation like this, when the country is increasing the power tariff and it is beyond the regional level and beyond the global levels, so then it creates very unhealthy situation for the local industries. About 20 to 30% electricity demand has come down. That is mainly due to the closures of business and the disconnection of the household connections. This is predicted to go up to about 40%. So if that happens and if there is no mechanism to reduce the cost of CEB and LACO, are we going to go for another tariff increase? If that happens, so that will be further burden on the industry. This has to be addressed either from the budget or either separately. Then the next thing is the access to low-cost finance. Today, the interest has come down. That's something good, but still there should be a lot of ways and means to look at low-cost finances and bring them here. As an example, green bonds and social impact bonds. Sri Lanka should look at this. There's another thing. So we have a very good cooperative system. This generally in the world called pre-owned and community-owned ventures. So this system can be improved. So they are the own enterprises. Many other stakeholders bring the fund to the venture. So these are another way that you can bring down the cost. One very important fact is digital economy. So bringing down cost of business is very much important for a country in terms of attracting foreign direct investment or even the local entrepreneurs too. They should invest more on the businesses. So we should establish a clear and robust legal framework for digital signatures and electronic transactions. This is something very, very important for Sri Lanka. So if this happens, the country can move forward from this disaster what we are facing right now. As a support to this initiative, the government should encourage and implement paperless process for others to follow. Another area is free trade agreements and various comprehensive partnership agreements. We have to study in a short, medium term and a long term basis and go for that. We find most of the free trade agreements that we have gone in has not brought in desired results to Sri Lanka. Simply, we have poorly negotiated them and we didn't know or we never studied properly what are the things that we can supply to those countries in a volume form. We should have that same way, protecting the industries and improving the industries, bringing down the cost of the businesses and doing more exports and earn a better income.
Welcome back. Now, Galadari Hotels PLC signed an agreement with the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka in a bid to enable the hotel to set new standards in the industry through its properties refurbishment. Asia Capital PLC, meanwhile, has entered into an amicable settlement with Ceylon Bank PLC in relation to the recovery action, which was scheduled to be initiated on 3 of its properties.
Galadari Hotels Lanka PLC successfully signed an agreement with the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka as the first step towards the property's refurbishment process. The property will go through a total transformation which will enable the hotel to set new standards, solidifying its high competitiveness in the industry. This is the first of a series of events that will take place as the hotel starts its new journey, which will ultimately lead to an engagement with Radisson Hotels Asia Pacific Investments Pte Limited to manage Galadari Hotel Colombo under a new brand name. Asia Capital PLC meanwhile informed that the company has entered into an amicable settlement with Ceylon Bank PLC. In its corporate disclosure, the company says the settlement was reached in relation to a recovery action which has been scheduled to initiate on 3 of its properties. Consequently, Ceylon Bank PLC has agreed to postpone its recovery action till the 31st of December 2023, while further development in this regard will be appraised to shareholders. In the meantime, the integrated capacity building approach and regional development efforts of the Information and Communication Technology Agency of Sri Lanka has been acknowledged at the 7th Digital Governance Symposium. This event, organized in collaboration with the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Division for Public Institutions and Digital Governance, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety, and Incheon Metropolitan City, was a remarkable platform for global dialogue and recognition. During the event, Sri Lanka's capacity building and regional digital transformation approach was acknowledged as an exemplary case study in advancing the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This recognition underscores the global relevance and significance of ICTA's work in the realm of digital transformation.
Now, following the latest updates around the world, Russia launched a missile attack on Ukraine's capital and the surrounding region for the first time in weeks this morning. This attack on the Ukraine's capital city of Kiev comes after a long pause since the 21st of September this year. However, according to Ukrainian sources, 19 Iranian-made Shahed drones out of 31 missiles launched by the Russian forces in the overnight attack were shot down by the Ukraine's air defense force.
A Russian missile attack was launched on the Ukraine's capital of Kyiv and a nearby region for the first time in weeks today. Accordingly, 2 strong explosions were heard and trails were visible in the sky in central Kyiv this morning. Air alerts for Kyiv and a nearby region were announced just minutes before the explosions were heard, and city authorities urged the residents to stay in shelters. Ukrainian officials stated that a Russian ballistic missile hit the capital city of Ukraine after a long pause of 52 days, adding that another missile failed to reach Kyiv as Ukrainian air defense forces shot it down while it was approaching the capital. In total, Ukrainian air defenders shot down 19 Iranian-made Shahed drones out of 31 launched by the Russian forces in an overnight attack on southern and eastern regions. It was further reported that no casualties or major damage were reported in the capital. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said earlier this week that Ukraine had deployed more Western air defense systems in anticipation of a second full winter of Russian attacks on energy facilities.
And with that, we wrap up tonight's edition of AdaDerana First at 9. Thank you. Have a great night.